Hey everybody, it's Dave here with two old bloggers and Darren over there. How you doing, buddy?
Excellent, David. How about you?
I am doing good. Been rushing to get this show all set up because there's a lot of stuff going on, and of course we had the post game last night. So
Mm,
let's get it started.
yes.
Climb in the Pocket, Daily Norseman, and Lake Monster Brewing presents Two Old Bloggers. And we're back. Two old bloggers on a Sunday after the game was played. That is a little bit unusual for us, but it is what it is. And it just worked out that way because Darren flew back from Nova Scotia yesterday to Yellowknife. How was the flight?
Smooth as silk, Davy, hasn't been the case the past few months when flying throughout Canada, where it seems like delays and canceled flights all the time. I don't know how things are going south of the border, but
Oh, there's
it's been
plenty of canceled flights.
it's been as they like to say, a shit show here a lot of times. But our flights are fine. Got back into Yellowknife at 11:30 p.m. last night, Mountain Standard Time, after I caught 3 flights and total 8 hours on planes. Happy to be done that sort of stuff.
And you've caught up, you've watched the game in its condensed form, so you know
I
what a snoozer it was. Thankfully, you watched it in condensed form and not the long form because it was an absolute snore fest. It was not an exciting offensive powerhouse game that we hope to see, but hey, we have a few of those, so
It
what
is
happens?
preseason,
It is
but yes,
preseason.
I'm somewhat glad that I didn't wait all day anxiously looking forward to that game and then end up watching what we all ended up watching, which
Uh-huh.
was, like you said, a snooze fest and overall uh, preseason, but a bit of a disappointing performance by the Vikings, keeping in context that it was uh, backups and backups to backups
And
playing
as
for both
Brian
teams.
as Brian says, vanilla. He says
Vanilla
offense, but
offense,
also, and that goes
also
for
defense.
defense. So
Yeah.
let's get into it.
Yes.
Like Drew says, let's talk Vikings football. And we're going to do that. We're going to scroll down here. Theme 1. We have Vikings 49ers. That's a game we're going to discuss. We happened last night. It was preseason game 2 at US Bank Stadium. It is our only home preseason game of the season, which is probably a good thing because it means we get more home games during the regular season, 9 to be exact. Can't beat that with a stick. And let's talk about it.
Yes, let's talk about it. As we, for those that watched last night, you got to you saw Dave and I have already talked about it was a snooze fest, and but the, but yeah. So I think, again, bit of a definitely entertainment wise, David, disappointing to watch, boring to watch. But it's preseason, and that's the way it goes when you've got both teams playing backups and second stringers and third stringers, and in some cases, guys that are going to get cut in a week.
Right.
Um,
And the Vikings held back 27 players, and my buddy Beto from Niner Sickness said the Niners held back 26 players. Literally, the majority of all the starters did not play. We'll
yeah,
get
the only
into the actually only one I saw that did play. We'll get into him here shortly. But We named this backward stepping, and in it, Kellen Mond took a backward step. He started the game. He had 3 drives. He looked over. He looked to me anxious and a little bit nervous, and he wasn't in sync. Will Raggets here talks about how long he holds the ball. He holds it for an average of 3.11 seconds. There's only 2 other people in the league that hold it that long. That is not a good thing, and when you're nervous, it makes it even worse. But he was battling with Sean Mannion during the evening for who's going to be QB2 or if either of them are going to be QB2. He came in last night. They did Kellen Mond. He did the 3 series. They brought in Mannion to sort of calm things down a bit, which he did. And then they brought Mond back in and Mannion back in, and they did that sort of thing. Kevin O'Connell explained it as they've got to be able to go in and out of a game. So that's why he does it. And that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, I know that last week and you can look at it both ways, right, David, on this. Last week, some people were mentioning about how they didn't like that Mond got pulled by Mannion and then he got put back in. They thought that was a bit odd, especially when Mond was playing pretty well in this case. But, if you're a coach, you want to throw these guys and you're not sure about your backup. You're not sure about these guys and who you're going to pick for that position. So in this way, throw them in some adverse situations and see how they react to it. And like you said, if you're a backup, you're not playing, you could get thrown in at any moment's notice. And you've got to be able to go in a game without having touched the ball at all and go in there and perform well on them like a second's notice when you've been holding the clipboard all game. So this whole thing about kind of mixing and matching, putting them in, I think there is definitely merit to doing that, even if it messes up the rhythm for both quarterbacks, that if they've gotten in one. But I think that's the reality of being a backup quarterback is you don't have rhythm, right? Yeah.
And during the season, you get very few snaps, and you hope not to play on Sunday. You hope to sit there with your clipboard and your earpiece and listen to the plays and look and nod your head. And when Kirk Cousins comes off the field, help him, say, hey, you should have seen this. I saw this while I was watching, type of stuff. And that's all you want out of a backup quarterback until you absolutely need him. And hopefully this year, knock on wood, we won't need him. So now it is brought up over the Viking sphere, everybody talking that with Kellen Mond's poor performance, and it was poor last night, we'll get more into it because it touches on other players, that the Vikings still may be looking out for a new backup quarterback. If you watched our show last week, you've got a good list, a partial list, by far not a complete list, but a partial list of who might the Vikings seek out if they choose to seek out. That's yet to be determined. And who knows? We'll find out. If
Drew's asking about, who would you, if you're only going to keep 2 QBs, and I think that's a very distinct possibility here for the Vikings because, there's other positions where we could probably use an extra body, offensive line, defensive line, corner, all of those spots where there's a high rate of injury at those positions. And this is really, if we had to cut one, I don't have any say in it, but I would keep Mond just because of the upside factor. And I do think that he looks a lot better this preseason than he did last preseason. But of course, last preseason he looked horrendous, so he had quite a ways to go. But I think he's getting there. But and I don't want to get into too much of this either because we're going to talk about it in the next theme a bit. But I would pick Mond because he's got all of the qualities that physically that you want in a QB, but I think mentally is where things are missing, and hopefully that the Vikings and and
can
they
can
could
coach
more
him and train
experience.
him
Yeah,
to get that. And I agree with you on your conclusion. Out of the two, I would pick Mond. And if Drew's wondering where that extra roster position goes, it could go in a number of places. One, they may keep an extra running back than they normally do because we have so many good ones, and they don't want to let them go. So, but it
one
could be
thing.
wide receiver, it could be on the defensive line or the offensive line, it could be almost everywhere. So it's just there's plenty of
I,
room to keep extra.
I think that the one thing I should say about that quarterback question is that I would prefer that they would keep Mon, but I'm not even 50% convinced that the Vikings coaching staff would make that same decision, because for whatever reason, Sean Mannion seems to he must be a really nice guy and get along well with people, especially coaches, because the previous regime wanted him around as a security blanket and I think right now maybe he does offer more, like you say, on that sideline aspect, where if he can go to Cousins with 8 years in the league, he can go to Cousins and say, I saw this, I saw that, did you see this? Maybe we should be doing this. Did you miss that? Whereas I don't know if Mond in his second year can offer that same kind of value on the sideline. But on the other hand, I don't know how big of a deal that is for Kirk Cousins, or how much value a team puts into that, and if that should be the main reason why you keep one guy over the other guy.
And Purple Haze suggests release Mon, see if he makes it to the practice squad.
I don't think that would happen.
So
but
I don't know.
But yeah.
Going over the game last night, the Vikings lost. Not that the score matters at all. There were some players that stood out. There's one in particular that absolutely was a disruptive force.
Yeah, and I think anybody who watched the game knows who that is, and that is Mr. Number 76 back there, T.Y. McGill. And he was a disruptive force against the Raiders, and even more so last night. Like everybody, we know he got the 1.5 sacks. He damn near had 2 others. The fumble deep in the Vikings inside the 10, the fumble that was caused, he got big time immediate pressure right up the gut on that. I think he was also offside, but they didn't.
Well, I was asked
it.
that last night on
Yeah.
Niner Sickness's show. He says, "Was he offsides?" You could say he was offsides. I said, "Well, from the camera view, which was sort of up and above, it looked like he was offsides." But I go, he may not have been offsides because his head is literally a foot away from the football. If a center just barely moves that football like that, he can go. And that may be what happened. We don't know because we don't have the regular season, top camera crews out there looking down the line and, all the shots. So otherwise it looked offsides, but he got away with it. So at least the line umpire thought he was good. So
he may have timed it perfectly. The ball may have been getting snapped right through the center's ass at that time, and we just
all it's got to do is move.
Yeah, all he's got to do is move.
All those hands have to do is move, start to move, and he can go.
But it was just as I was watching the game, time after time after time, McGill was in your where the play was, T.Y. McGill was there, penetrating, making tackles for losses, the sacks, the near sacks, forcing the QB, whether it was Sudfield or Brock Purdy, to throw the ball when they didn't want to. He was the Vikings' best player last night by far, and he's been the star of the 2 preseason games for the Vikings. And when you read up about from the beat writers, they've mentioned him multiple times the past 2 weeks about how he keeps on making plays in practice. So T.Y. and not expected, although last year he played in that final game in the season final against the Bears, and he almost, that game, I think the Vikings had 7 sacks of Andy Dalton. T.Y. McGill almost had a couple of sacks in that one himself, and I was like, who is this guy? I know we signed him off the scrap heap, but he looks like a good player in this game, and in preseason, he looks like the same guy. He is causing a lot of problems out there, and he's on the team. He's made the team already. There's no way that they're cutting this guy.
Well, and I was about to bring that up. I think he rounds out the defensive tackle room at nose tackle. I don't think we're going to get Ndamukong Suh, and so I think this is perfect. And I don't know if Ndamukong Suh at his age could be that sort of player. So now, T.Y. McGill's been in the league 8 years. This is his 8th year. He's not a spring chicken, but he seems more invigorated this year, and he's doing stuff on the field that we didn't expect from him, and that's a good thing.
No, and like he broke in with the Colts. He's played with the Chargers. He played with I'm forgetting
Kansas
the
City,
other team,
Kansas City, and Seattle.
Yeah, so he's been around the block, but kind of a guy I've mentioned a few other times, the kind of guy that reminds me of like Tom Johnson when we got him in 2014. Been around the block a few times, hadn't really shown much. Was kind of a nondescript player that I was like, who's Tom Johnson? He gets with us in 2014 and suddenly wasn't a starter, was a rotational guy, but suddenly he's like making plays all of the time. Was one of our better defenders, and
a late bloomer.
A late bloomer, and maybe T.Y. McGill is the same thing, which is great because along that defensive line, based on some of the things I've been seeing these 2 games, Janarius Robinson not playing. They don't play the same positions, but Janarius Robinson ain't doing much. Jonathan Bullard's not doing a whole lot. The rookie shows a little bit of Tomomayo, whatever. How do you pronounce it? He's been okay, but he hasn't really made any plays. That James Lynch hasn't really done a whole lot. Like they need guys like somebody to step up, and T.Y. McGill is stepping up big time. And the way he's playing now, if he plays anywhere close to that. Again, he's not playing against a lot of the starters either. He's doing this against backups. He's a backup himself, but he's a backup with a lot more experience than these other backups. And so maybe he's feasting on inferior competition in a way. He knows he's got good pass rushing moves. He knows how to work things. He knows how to recognize things. So maybe that could be a reason why he's excelling so much, but I don't think so. I think that, he's going to be a valuable piece of this defense going into the year. And like I said, I love a story like T.Y. McGill, somebody you don't expect, late bloomer, and really just comes out of nowhere and becomes a contributor to the team. I mean, that is like a huge bonus for the Minnesota Vikings and the Minnesota Vikings defense. And maybe also just Ed Donatel and the defensive line coach Rumpf, maybe they just found a way to get to this guy and bring out the best in him.
Yeah, and you can't beat that with a stick. I think it's a good thing. Other good players from the game, we had Patrick Jones had a good game, and he continues. That's 2 in a row that he has showed promise. So he is building a case for himself to be one of the 2 primary backups in the edge department behind Zadarius Smith and Daniil.
And I like how Jones has developed, or how so far from what I've seen in the 2 preseason games, making himself noticeable a lot more than he did in his rookie year. And last year we weren't expecting him to set the world on fire, but I think he did less than we would have liked. And maybe part of that was Mike Zimmer to blame, just not trusting the rooks and not giving him the opportunities. But when he did get opportunities last year, he didn't really do much with them. This year, he's more impactful in the 2 preseason games, and he's been going up against some starter guys. Mm-hmm. I like where his development is at right now, Patrick Jones. Another defender last night that I thought was at least not terrible, which maybe isn't a great, the great comp, but I thought Caleb Evans was pretty solid.
Another one
at left corner, tackled well, was around the ball. Still, I think he gives up too much cushion. He's a little bit cautious, maybe too cautious in his coverage, but that's to be expected. But I thought he played, relatively well. And again, on a night when, especially in the second half, when the tackling left a lot to be desired from the Minnesota Vikings defense, he was a guy who was solid tackling, I felt, pretty much the whole night.
And when Booth went down, Booth rolled his ankle, supposedly aggravated a previous injury, and he's going to be susceptible to that lower ankle twists, ankle rolls, which means he's going to need more tape next time, Mr. Trainer. Um, he should be back soon. I don't even expect him to miss next week. But is when the Caleb Evans got even more time and shined. I agree with you. He did well. Another.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say another good one was, believe it or not, Amir Marset, Smith Marset as receiver.
Not as a punt returner.
No, not as a punt returner. And we'll get into that a bit later.
Yeah.
But as a receiver, he did okay. So, there was that. Let's see. Blake Brandel had a good, decent game as backup tackle. Ones that didn't, Kellen Mond, we've already discussed that. We'll get into it more. Janarius Robinson didn't have a good game. Zach Davidson. Zach. You got to catch the ball before you run, buddy. That's the way it works.
That is job number one of somebody who catches the ball for a living. Catch the ball.
Catch the ball. He dropped a sure touchdown. He dropped a couple other passes, and it's just like, it's going to be, at the beginning we all got excited. Maybe he has a chance. I don't think he has a chance. He'll end up, if he's lucky, on the practice squad. I don't think he makes the tight end group, the room, unless it's via practice squad. And
another guy, the one guy I'd like to mention is just, this won't be based on any grades that we have, and the Vikings running attack last night was pretty poor overall, but the more I see a Ty Chandler, the more I'm liking of him. He got the most touches of the running backs, and he didn't have a great average. I think it was like under 3 yards per carry, but that was everybody on the Vikings last night. But he just has, he's got a way. He can make guys miss, and he knows what he's doing out there, it looks like, as far as hitting holes or cutting back. He's good at getting a little bit of extra off of contact. I think that the Vikings have found something with Ty Chandler, even if last night's game was not the eye-opening stat-wise that the Raiders game was for a lot of Vikings fans. But I think Ty Chandler may have the number 3 running back spot. If it's not sewn up, it's getting close for him.
Or 4. See, this is where, when Drew asked about where do you get, if you only keep 2 quarterbacks, where's that extra position go? I can see them keeping Cook, Madison to me is expendable, but Madison, Nwangu, because they're going to keep Wang Chung.
Yes.
Yep. If anything, for kick returns. But even he looks good running the ball.
Yes, he does.
And Ty Chandler. That's 4 running backs right there. Plus C.J. Ham. That's a 5-back room. That is a fat room.
It is.
And I could see that because of wanting to keep those guys, I can see why that helps make the decision, let's go with 2 quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think even Kenny Nwangwu is, which has surprised me a bit, is that he's looked good as a pass receiver as well out of the backfield, and that is key in the Rams type offense that Kevin O'Connell's running, and actually it's key in any NFL offense you're running, because the screen game is big these days. So
and Drew says Chandler reminds him of Jet McKinnon. I agree there, and I think Wang Chung, there's a little bit of that in him too. So I think it's very, very good. Tim says McGill is not going anywhere. I didn't think so. Then we get to this one. Believe it or not, Schlottman played halfway decently last night, which makes you wonder and go, because we know one of the big deficiencies so far this season is that Garrett Bradbury still is having problem with pressure up the middle on his pass blocking. Schlottman had a decent grade last night. However, we got to remember it's against 2s and 3s for the most part. There was a couple 1s mixed in, just like we had Ed Ingram playing, but it was it makes you go, could Schlotman be the answer at center?
Yeah, I don't think he is, but I don't think Bradbury is either, which is really the problem for the Vikings is they don't have any answers at center right now, at least not what I'm thinking. And Craig's talking about Josh Sokol, that long shot to make the team for sure. And he has been able to get a fair number of snaps in the two preseason games, and I suspect he'll get a fair amount in the third preseason game. So I potentially, I still don't think I think he's a practice squad guy, and he's a guy you can get on the practice squad. I think the fact that the Vikings got Chris Cooper as the offensive line coach from the Broncos, and Schlotman played under him for the Broncos, and they brought Schlotman over. And if Schlotman is not stinking it up, and he hasn't been in the two preseason games, I don't see how there's any way he doesn't make the team, and probably I don't see any way that he's not also the backup center the way things are going. And maybe it's a Mason Cole situation again, where Cole was not a great player. If you look at his PFF grades throughout his career, not particularly stellar, but he had position flexibility. And when he was around as the plan B for the Vikings at center, and they had to use plan B, and then Cole ended up playing better than Bradbury
until he got hurt.
Yeah, so maybe Schlotman has the same opportunity happen to him if Bradbury keeps on struggling, particularly in pass pro, where, like you say, keeps on getting forklifted into Cousins, which you don't want because Cousins can't step into his throws then, and he gets jumpy when he's got pressure up the middle.
Speaking of pressure, let's talk about Ed Ingram.
Haha.
All right. Nick Olson put this out last night, and this was before the sack. Find the starting offensive lineman. And Ed had, to me, a relatively decent game. He didn't get graded nicely, especially on pass pro because of the next play that came out. But he was dominating, and the guy he was going against was one of their starters, one of the few starters they played.
Javon Kinlaw.
Yep. Ed Ingram today said the battle with Jesse Davis to start right guard, that he probably helped himself on Saturday, but he's going to just keep working on it, which I love the attitude. But let's get to that next play. This is the play that he got beat on. Kinlaw beat him. You could see him running past him right there. It took a lot of time once the ball was snapped for this to take place. And yes, he got beat. But look at the field view here. If you look at Kellen Mond sitting back there, one, he could run to his right, where there's nobody there except for number 75, who has a blocker in front of him. There's a decent hole between him and Ingram. However, Ingram would have to ride his guy all the way beyond him. But look at the open receivers. I see 3 open wide receivers in this view. If you look downfield, the top wide receiver, which I think is Amir Marset, you look further down, you see one, and the one on the bottom on the right side is not open. He's covered. And if you look at the dump receiver, the check down receiver, which is probably one of the tight ends, he is wide open.
He is wide open. Could have caught it and would have probably got a first down.
So, Ingram did get beat on that. He says, today I've been working on not oversetting, and on that play I overset it, and he just got by me. So it was just bad offense on me, and that's something I need to continue to work on, which is good. I love that he's identified what it is and that he's going to continue to work on it. He also said he felt like he played very physical. He knows his assignments. He got beat on that one play inside, which ended up with the sack by Javon Kinlaw. So he's got something to work on. I agree. He should not be thinking he's got everything down. He should be working on it for the rest of his career. That's the way he gets better. But that is it. There's one more player I wanted to highlight out of the game. Brian Asamoah.
Yes.
Brian Asamoah seemed to have another decent game. I have a film clip here I want to show you where he busts up the middle, sheds his blocker, and grabs the running back and stuffs him in the hole. That is exactly what you want to see from a linebacker. I want to see that every single time. Now, if you want to see that again, let's go again because it's fun to look at. Boom. Guy didn't even reach the line of scrimmage, and then there's gang tackle after that. Brian Asamoah.
T.Y. McGill in there again.
Yep. Brian Asamoah, to me, has basically locked up that first linebacker off the bench role. So
he was around the ball a lot last night. David didn't always make the play, but like that one play there you go where he did the things that we knew he could do, right? Like great closing speed and ability to wind in on like a crevice opening. But what I like on that play is that we know Asamoah is not a big linebacker, weight wise and height wise, but he's a stocky kid for the height and weight that he is. But he met a running back head on, and the running back didn't move him an inch. And so I feel good about that because that's one of the things Asamoah is going to have to prove is that at the NFL level, when he gets a one-on-one with a running back, or that he can take them down and not be moved backwards or get run over. And on that play, he was the one doing the running over, not vice versa. So that is a great little clip and very encouraging from Asamoah, who I agree I thought played pretty well last night when he did play. And I think and he's just learning. He's just getting going, right? When he starts getting it and he understands the NFL game, who knows what this kid could accomplish with the kind of skills that he has at his disposal.
Right. And he's got two good veterans in Hicks and Kendricks to learn behind. I think especially next year, most likely a year after, we're going to have a great linebacker. I think the world of him. Was there any other takes on that last night's game that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I don't know if I want to, again, make too much of it because of a couple of things. I don't want to make too much of it because, again, second stringers, third stringers, like the only Viking starters that played and one of them's not even a starter yet, is Ed Ingram, who might be the starter at right guard. And the other guy was Armand Watts, he started. And he, again, is not guaranteed to be a starter, but we think he's going to be one of the starting defensive ends in the 3-4. So those were the only two Viking starters that played. But on offense, the third down woes again. Like the Vikings, I think, are like 3 for 120 on third down in the two preseason games so far. They're just not getting anything going. I don't expect that to be a problem when you got Cousins in there, when you got the starting offensive lineman in there, when you got Cook, Jefferson, Thielen, and Irv Smith Jr. when he gets back. But I don't know, just something that is not right when your backups are like that. And again, the tackling, especially in the second half, way too many missed tackles and not enough penetration at the line of scrimmage. And the 49ers offense had some super long, 10 plus play drives that just ate the clock. And you look at the game stats and they had like almost close to like a 2-1 in time of possession advantage over us. So it's not surprising that the Vikings lost the game. So those aren't really things that I want to see, even when it's our backups going against their backups. I want our backups to beat their backups. They didn't do that last night.
Now, do you put any of that on O'Connell for trying to scheme them to play a little bit better, even if it's vanilla?
Yeah, well, it's like the thing about the defense is that I was noticing with the 49ers is that the 49ers blitzed, I don't know if a lot, but they were blitzing a fair bit. In 2 games, the Vikings have rarely blitzed. They've been sending 4 guys, 3 or 4, pretty much 100% of the time. So Ed Donatel is not showing any of his tricks or cards so far, and I'm okay with that. I just want to see but I don't want us to get pushed off the line of scrimmage 3 or 4 yards
Right.
back. I don't want us to miss tackles when tackles need to be made. I think that's stuff that has got nothing to do with vanilla defense or scheme. That's just guys with the right, not playing with the right technique and getting beat by the other guy one-on-one. And again, I don't want to see our backups lose to anybody and not their backups. So I don't mind the vanilla stuff. If we're being very basic, just about every team is doing that. And coaches want to save their bag of tricks for when it really counts. And I think that's the way it should be.
Should, in the next game, preseason game 3, the last preseason game at Denver, should Kevin O'Connell play the starters?
I
will
wouldn't.
He play the starters?
I don't think he will. He seems to be doing what quite a few coaches in this preseason have done, and David, is that they're prioritizing health of the starters over reps and snaps in meaningless preseason games. He's done that. I thought he was going to play the starters a bit this game, but I guess they considered the 2 joint practices.
The 2 joint practice on Wednesday and Thursday was their work.
Yeah, whereas like the Andy Reid's got like a different view of it, because
Right.
last year he played Mahomes in the 3rd preseason game, and he played him a fair bit, and he's played him in this preseason as well as other starters. So
yeah, he had 2 or 3 series yesterday as well.
I don't I feel that the only way that it would make a whole lot of sense and be meaningful to have the starters play is if you're actually going to play them a lot. I don't see any point in putting them in there for like 2 series and then yanking them. If you're going to play them for a full half or maybe even 3/4, just so you've seen them play almost a full game in the new offense with each other, even though a lot of them have played with each other for
Years.
multiple seasons so far, but they haven't played multiple seasons with this coaching staff and in this offense and in this defense with to me there would be value in the starters playing more. But if Justin Jefferson tears a knee in game number 3 and he's out for the season,
right,
Darren's going to be irate that he was in the game.
Fans will be screaming. Now, the question is, all right, if you don't play them, they're obviously healthy for week 1. But do you run into the fact that, just like we were seeing yesterday, there was players that were getting gassed, and it was only the 2s and the 3s playing, half a game each, and they were getting gassed. They're not. It takes a while to get. Yes, they're hitting during camp. There's not a whole lot of it, but they are doing some hitting, and yes, they're in the best shapes of their lives, but shapes and football shapes are 2 different things. I wonder if it's a gamble of some sorts, and he may be saying, no, the risk isn't there. I'm going to keep everybody healthy to week 1. These guys are working. They're going to be fine. Dave, you're worried about it too much, and that could be. But when they get up to Green Bay, playing in week 1 here at US Bank at home, I'm curious if they're going to run into conditioning issues late in the the 4th quarter, and that happens across the NFL. You see it in those early weeks where guys aren't used to being out there, and it's the hotter time of the year. Not that playing indoors has anything to do with that, but it's the hotter time of the year, and people run out of energy. I worry that holding them off to then could be a disadvantage, but it's up to Kevin O'Connell. We don't know.
And I before the show, I didn't get a chance, but I was going to take a look at Green Bay's 2 preseason games to see. We know Aaron Rodgers isn't playing at all, but he doesn't need to. But I did want to take a look. Like Aaron Jones hasn't played at all, I think, during the preseason. I think that they've Matt LaFleur has done sort of the same. I don't think they've played very many of their starters the first two preseason games. So I think that argument could be,
Both sides.
goes for both sides. And the first game is in US Bank Stadium, which is climate controlled. So I don't know. It's not like you're going to be playing down in Houston, Texas,
Or Miami or someplace like that.
Miami or something like that,
where the humidity's sky high and it's 97 degrees. Yeah,
I think that it's legit to worry about like the rust factor, just the fact that these guys have not played in a real game. But if both teams are in that boat, then I don't have too many concerns about it. Yeah. I don't have too many concerns about it. But it's something to think about. But you've got, as a coach, you got to make a decision based on whatever the evidence that you have, because you can't do it both ways. You got to do it one or the other. You either got to play the starters and have them, get them in game shape, or you rest them and make sure they're healthy for the first game. And he's chosen option number 2. And we are going to find out early on in the season whether we may find out anyway, whether that was the right call or not. But with a veteran team like the Vikings, I think, again, this is probably weighing into the third theme of our show, but with a veteran team like the Vikings, there really shouldn't be any excuse for them to be like terribly rusty. They've been around. Danielle Hunter, Zadarius Smith, Harrison Smith. Yeah. They've been around for years.
So, speaking of the second thing, let's go to theme 2. Now we get to more of our planned area. Yes. You wanted to talk about Ed Ingram.
Him and a few other positional battles. There are not very many of them on this Vikings team, which is might seem a bit odd for a team that's missed the playoffs the past 2 years, that most of their starting positions are, we felt they were pretty set. But one that was not set was at right guard. And Jesse Davis came in as it looked like he was the starting guy. He was going to be the top guy, was so in training camp. But then against the Raiders, Ed Ingram was one of the highest rated Vikings offensive players, and Jesse Davis was the lowest ranked offensive player. And even though Davis only played 7 snaps in the Raiders game, the snaps he played that I saw, he got beat and did not look very good. Whereas Ed Ingram had a very strong game. And then during joint practices, we read that Ingram was running with the ones one day. Davis was, I believe you had said that he had an injury.
I think he's got an elbow injury.
Yeah.
Either he or Reed's the one with the elbow, and the other one's got arm something.
So that made everybody go, it looks like that Ed Ingram is now the front runner. I don't think the battle is over, but he looks like the front runner to be the starting right guard when the Vikings play that team from Wisconsin in however many days. Last night's game against the 49ers, we've already talked about him. I thought Ingram was, didn't play as well as he did against the Raiders, but he wasn't, horrible. I think that this position battle isn't still over, but it's looking like Ed Ingram, the guy that is going to be the starter. And I think so far that he has earned that right. And every draft profile I read of Ed Ingram when we got drafted, we know that he got drafted a little bit higher than some consensus boards had him. But every draft profile that I have seen from Ed Ingram said eventually he was going to be a starter in the NFL for whoever drafted him. And it looks like that that time has come a little bit quicker than we expected. But I'm happy with that. Jesse Davis is who he is. Not a mediocre journeyman, not very good. Again, like I said last week, he is not the future at that position, and Ed Ingram is. And if they're about equal, I'd prefer if Ed Ingram got put in there. Give it to Ed Ingram, and it looks like he has. Now, again, he could maybe, if he has a horrible next game, I don't know if Davis is going to play at all. But if Ingram looks really shaky in the final preseason game, maybe O'Connell and Chris Cooper and Wes Phillips think a little bit, we better put the veteran in and see how that goes. But what I've seen from Ingram is that he does not look over, he does not look wide-eyed. He looks like he belongs out there. I think he's a confident kid. We know that he's saying all the right things about being hardworking and working on his areas, his
Yeah,
mistakes.
oversetting and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yes.
he knows what he's doing wrong, and he just has to correct it. So this is looking good to me. This is what you and I wanted to see. Ed Ingram taking the bull by the horns and winning the job over Jesse Davis.
Aaron mentioned he created a hole, especially in the red zone. And during the game last night, when we ran it, I'm trying to remember who was the one that ran it in. He did. It was run behind Ed Ingram, and Ed Ingram just blew everybody wide open.
And it was Ty Chandler that got that scored that TD. But last week when we were talking about Ed Ingram, I said, when I was talking about my struggles with assessing the offensive line play, because, but one of the things I said was that if you don't see the other team getting pressure up the middle on our quarterbacks, and when we're running the ball, when we're running to the right side, Ingram's side, we're getting good gains, that's probably an indication that he's playing pretty well. And against the Raiders, both of those things happened, which indicated to me that, in my untrained eye, that Ed Ingram was at least partly responsible for creating those holes, creating that good pass protection. And he wasn't a liability out there, and far from it. His grades in that game showed that he was an extremely valuable asset to the Vikings offensive line.
Yep. That brings us on to Ty Chandler. Speaking of the touchdown.
Well, yes, I think, like it was said, I don't think Madison keeps on getting. He ran pretty well last night in the limited reps that he got, but I think the Vikings are comfortable with him as the backup. But if for some reason, if a team is really short with running back depth, they have some bad injuries here in the next week or so, perhaps Madison is trade bait, but just based on what Ty Chandler has done so far in the running game and how he's looked. He looked very comfortable at the pro level. Like I said, great at making the first guy miss. He's good at getting an extra yard or so after contact, and catches the ball well out of the backfield from what we've seen so far. I haven't really gotten a read on his pass protection yet, which is important as well. But I would feel, I don't know if the Vikings coaching staff is, but I would feel reasonably comfortable with him being Cook's backup from what I've seen so far.
See, I still want to go with Wang Chung.
Yeah.
Kane.
Yeah.
Kane has done well, and he's, like I said, he's catching passes out of the backfield. He's running smoothly, and we know if he gets in open space, he's gone. He's got that speed. He and Chandler both are fast. So
they are.
Aaron says Madison runs downhill really well, but his vision stinks. Yes, that's the problem with Madison.
It is. That's what keeps him from being, I think, a starter in this league. Is the vision stuff. But so there's that. But I think another one, the positional battles that is becoming a bit clearer now as we get late into training camp, was the other outside cornerback spot opposite of Patrick Peterson. There was some chatter that, like, the Vikings were had Andrew Booth Jr. competing against Cam Dantzler for that other spot opposite of Patrick Peterson. I didn't really think that was the case, but I think that competition's pretty much over at this point. Dantzler's looked very solid last week against the Raiders. Most everything we've read about from the beat writers in training camp is that he's had a very, very strong camp. Been beat by Justin Jefferson a few times, but everybody has been. So,
and he had a great 2 days against San Francisco as well.
That's right. The joint practices did very well. He's a guy going into his third year. He's had 2 years where he's played a fair bit. He knows how to play.
You're funny, Rocco.
Rocco, what are you doing, man? There must be a Packers show on now you can watch.
Go back into history about the 40s when they won their championships.
Oh, yeah, well. But anyway, welcome if you're going to stick around. We like viewers even if they don't cheer for the Vikings. But yeah, I think Dantzler's a guy. He's in his third year. I think he understands how to play at the NFL level, what he can get away with, what he can't get away with. And on the other hand, Andrew Booth has got to work on those things.
Mm-hmm.
Very competitive as hell, wants to fight everybody, very confident, but can get grabby. And he got, again, called on 2 penalties on the same play against the Raiders, which you don't all see
Right.
every day. I think so. He's
But he
got to
didn't have
learn.
any penalties last night.
No, that's right. We've got to hope that the ankle injury isn't something that bugs him and holds him back.
Hopefully it's
Very
just minor.
unfortunate. Very
Tape it up.
unfortunate.
Tape it up. Tape it up. Tape it up.
Very unfortunate. But I think he's still, Booth Jr., a lot of potential there, but I think he needs time to really learn how to play at the NFL level. Again, understand that the things that he did in college and could get away with, he cannot get away with at the NFL level anymore. And a lot of that is a lot of getting hands on the receiver. They don't allow you to do that as much at the NFL level. And with Dantzler and Patrick Peterson both on the team, he has the time to learn those things over the next few weeks. He has time to grow, and maybe later in the year, he does take over for somebody. Maybe it's Chandon Sullivan in the slot. Maybe it's Patrick Peterson.
Well, or maybe a rotation to give those guys a break. Yes.
Yeah, and Zimmer liked to do it. Was that he rotated in his cornerbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Too, like he had to starter, but sometimes Trey Waynes in his rookie and second year went in there for Terrence Newman, had played a few series. I don't know whether Ed Donatello is going to go that way with Booth Jr., but Booth Jr., he needs a little bit of seasoning. I think most young cornerbacks do, and that is and so I think that Cam Dantzler's got the starting spot opposite of Patrick Peterson locked up, and I think that he's going to do very, very well there, as I've talked about many times.
That brings us to Will Ragatz.
Mr. Ragatz. Yes. I'm forgetting what this one was about. I'm forgetting what did I say? I forget.
That Will Ragatz thinks Smith Marset has an edge over Naylor and Albert Wilson.
Yes, that's it was the punt return job is a positional battle that the Vikings needed an answer to, and they have not. They didn't have the answer to it at the start of the year, and I think they still don't have the answer to it. Ragatz may have thought that Emir Smith-Marset had the edge in that job, and it certainly looked like that last night because he returned most of the punts. But he had a fumble last night on a pretty simple return. You can't put the ball on the ground. That one of the one of the top 3 assets you got to have as a punt returner is be sure-handed. So you can't be putting the ball on the ground as a punt returner, and he did that. He had one decent return, but I don't think that Emir Smith-Marset does not look natural returning punts. He didn't do it in college. He didn't do it last year. I don't know what the Vikings see in him that they feel that he is the guy. That's probably an indictment on all of the options that we have so far, that they think Emir Smith-Marset is the best guy.
And Naylor's another one.
Yeah, Naylor's in there, but if you were the Vikings, if you thought Naylor was the lead, you'd probably have him returning most of the punts last night, and he was not doing that. But I don't think that this job is Emir Smith-Marset, that he's wrapped it up, and certainly not after fumbling last night. And again, he hasn't. Along with along with returning kickoffs, David, he doesn't really look really great at that. But we know he's not going to do that job.
No, Wongwu's going to be number 1. Chandler's going to be number 2 on kick returns. That's it.
But right now, I don't know who the Vikings punt returner is, and we are hoping
that can actually return punts.
Yes, we are hoping as Viking fans that that with the new defense and the addition of Zadarius Smith and Jordan Hicks, that opponents are going to be punting a bit more than they did last year. So we're going to be needing a punt returner who can, like Marcus Sherrills, that we don't have to worry about that crap.
Sure hands and then can produce.
Hands.
Philip C. says try Chandler back there. I don't know if they've tried him back there yet. I know they went through a handful of players at the very beginning, and they seem to have whittled it down to ISM as the primary. It's just, like Aaron says, ISM makes me nervous.
I agree, Aaron, 110% on that one. He makes me nervous. I think he dropped, or he caught one punt in the Raiders game very awkwardly, or I think he almost dropped it as well. So that
Zach
happens twice in
Davis.
two. That happened. Yeah, if that happens, Purple Haze, no. Yeah, I don't know right now. I couldn't tell you who the Vikings. I couldn't tell you who the Vikings' best option is there. I haven't seen enough from Albert Wilson. I haven't seen enough from Naylor. What I have seen from Amir Smith-Marset is that he is not the guy we want returning punts, though.
Mm-hmm. T. Kubler says QB2 and starting center and tight end issue. Punt returner is all on Kwesi. Well, you hope the coaches can coach some of these guys up to be those, though. That's just the way it is. Next on your list, you had, once we got there, was the struggle for backup quarterback.
Yes. After Mond had a pretty strong performance against the Raiders last week, it seemed like he had what we wanted to see, all of us. I think most of us, you and I anyway, David, were like, finally, he's starting to get it. He's got the edge. Mannion is going to be gone as the backup quarterback. And then through the joint practices with the 49ers, we were reading about his continued ups and downs. Mannion reportedly outplayed him on the second day of joint practices. And so Mond didn't really build off his strong performance of the Raiders in the joint practices, and he definitely didn't build off on it last night against the 49ers. So right now, who's the guy in the lead? I think it's going to come down to the very last preseason game. And who plays better in that preseason game, Mannion or Mond, is probably the guy that is going to be the backup quarterback, or isn't going to be the one they're cutting anyway. And I think it's still quite possible the Vikings could bring in another veteran to be the backup, because they're not happy with either Mond or Mannion, or either of those guys. But it's, like I said earlier at the beginning of the show, I think Mond this preseason compared to last preseason is definitely a much better player, but he was so bad last year that's still not up to snuff to be a backup quarterback in the NFL. And you talked about one of the issues with him is that he's just up and down. He'll make a nice throw and then he'll miss on an easy throw. And the two interceptions last night were like bad lob it up, like very bad throws. The second one, that if he throws it in the right place, in that last drive of the game, that's either a touchdown for the Vikings,
right,
or it's just a ball that is an incomplete ball that near on the sidelines that doesn't hurt anybody. But he just underthrew it, lobbed it up there, and it was like an easy interception. So yeah, Gardner Minshew, sure, but what are we going to have to give up to get him? And
it all depends on.
Do the Eagles want to even give him up when they got Jalen Hurts back there and they're not 100% sold on him? So Mond's got everything you need to be a backup quarterback. He's got the size, he's got the mobility, he's got the arm, but he just doesn't seem to. He just takes to be. He just does not. He's not seeing the field properly, I think, and he takes too long to make decisions, which leads to holding on the ball too long. And he's got to mentally get better to be the backup quarterback. And I don't know, it's not because he's dumb, but just some guys just
that's just what holds him. And that's that was this deal out of college, is he was robotic, and that it takes time, and it's too long, and it's holding the ball, it's patting the ball. Not that Kirk Cousins has a bad habit of doing that too, but you've got to be able to figure that out if you're going to make it in this league. So
got to make the right reads and make the right quick reads.
And yes, T-Mac, they say Irv is on track. This week he can actually go out and sweat with everybody, so he's on track for week 1.
And I think O'Connell was talking about he'd be catching the ball pretty soon as well.
Aaron trade a running back in Bradbury and throw in a wide receiver, possibly. Yes, could be. That brings us, pardon me, to our favorite subject.
Does anybody want Garrett Bradbury? I'm not convinced about that.
Lake Monster Brewing. It's that time of the day when you get thirsty and you want a beer. So you go over to Lake Monster Brewing in St. Paul. Beautiful beer, young, small brewery, food outside, plenty of good people, and outstanding beer. Here's presently what's on tap. I did talk to Matt Lang before the show. I always check in with him at least once a week. He wanted everybody to know that not only can you get what you see there in the goblets and the pints and the cans and everything else, you can get it in a growler. Not just a crowler,
Yes.
which is a big can, but a growler, glass bottle, right?
Glass bottle.
All you got to do is ask, and you can get it in a growler, and you can take it home so you have plenty of it there for your Sundays to watch the Vikings, and it's absolutely perfect. And when you get done, just bring it back, get it cleaned up, exchanged, get a new one, and life is good.
The only thing about the growlers, David, is that it's a lot of beer and it goes flat quickly. So you got to drink it within 24 hours, or else it doesn't quite have the pop the next day. At least that's what I found. That's what I found from growlers.
It all depends on what you consider a lot. If you do
This is true.
If you do a six pack on a game day, it's not a six pack, so it's not even that.
No, that's true. I don't know. I just can't handle those 7 and 8% alcohol level a 6-pack of those, and I'm like passed out.
Well, that happens, and that's where Sackles comes from, right, Drew? We have a new partner.
Ooh,
this one up in Canada.
Hey, yes,
in Ontario, which is a wee bit of a drive for you, I know. But we have Eastside Jiu-Jitsu. This one is opening up. They're opening up in the next 2 weeks, and they are Vikings fans, and they wanted to join the show. So if you are in the Orleans area of Ontario, and you want to learn jiu-jitsu, yoga, women's only classes, this, that, and other, check them out. It's brand new. They're opening up. They've got brand new equipment, rooms, everything else. It should be great. Yes, Sackles. Sackles is due to a lot of beers and what defensive linemen should be doing and creating. So, that brings us to theme 3. Here you had, what does the NFL preseason mean to you?
Yes. We got the dynamic duo there, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, Vikings general manager, Kevin O'Connell, head coach. And yes, we wait a long time, David, for football to start, including which starts with preseason football. And
we're waiting longer to see the starters.
That's right. Yes, very long. And the question always is, as a fan, do wins in preseason translate into more wins in September, October, November, December, and January? Or do you look at it as like wins in preseason are not indicative of what kind of team you're going to have and whether you're going to get wins or not get wins in September, October, November, and December, and January, right? I tend to take the latter view of that. I think you do too. But when you look at Kwesi just smoked a fatty.
Could be.
Yeah. So I think after the Raiders game, for sure, a lot of Vikings fans were a bit testy, miffed, not very happy with the Vikings' performance, feeling a bit down all of a sudden about the Vikings' prospects for 2022, that we were crap, we were terrible, the season was over. I suspect that last night's game didn't allay any of those concerns from anybody.
But it's only the 2s and 3s, people. We still haven't seen the starters.
That's right. And so I think, what kind of team are the Vikings going to have in 2022? For everybody out there, Viking fans, and most people in this chat are not these people, or probably any of them. I think we've got a very smart, level-headed group that tunes into our show every week, except for Drew. Just joking, Drew. Thanks for always watching. But I think here's where we gotta. I hate to bring this guy up, but this is where we do the old. Aaron Rodgers, 2014. That team from Wisconsin starts out 1-2. The cheeseheads are going crazy. They think the season's over, and Rodgers gets on a radio show and he says one word: RELAX, relax. He said we're going to be fine. And unfortunately, that ended up being the case. The Packers were fine. And I think that Vikings fans who are worried about what they've seen in the first two games have to RELAX because, like you said, no Kirk Cousins, no Dalvin Cook, no Justin Jefferson, no Danielle Hunter, no Zadarius Smith, and on and on and on. You and I could go. The starters haven't been playing. Doesn't look like they will be playing in the third preseason game. And I just you gotta put that into put it into perspective. We've had two games of backups and second stringers and third stringers and fourth stringers and maybe even fifth stringers playing the majority of the snaps. What we're seeing does not mean a whole lot. Maybe a little bit differently because yes, it's a new coach, a new general manager. We got new offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, positional coaches, putting in new offensive and defensive systems. And a lot of our players haven't played under those systems. So, I think you want to see the starters out there. You want to see that the Vikings are looking good in these new systems. But it hasn't happened yet. I don't think that you've got to, I'm not really concerned at all. I think that there's been way more positive things that I've seen from individual players. Yeah. There's been way more positive things I've seen individually from the Vikings players in these two preseason games than I saw in any of the three last year, when the Vikings also played very sloppy, looked very uncompetitive in pretty much all three of the games, and there just wasn't anybody you could think about other than AJ Rose that really stood out and did anything of note at all. But we just talked about T.Y. McGill a little while ago. We've been talking about Ty Chandler, talking about Ed Ingram, Brian Asamoah. A lot of these are, and three of those guys are young guys.
Lewis Cine is making progress. Yes.
So I'm looking at, again, just some of those types of things. I think the offensive line, particularly in the Raiders game, looked a lot better than it had at other times last year. I think there's more positive things that I've seen in the two preseason games so far, again, than anything I saw last year in preseason. And I just, Kevin O'Connell is prioritizing the health of the starters over getting them into these games and getting them a few plays. And that's okay with me. Again, I'm not worried. We're talking about who's going to be the backup quarterback, who's going to be the punt returner. Not that those are huge issues, but Ted Glover was talking about it on our Gallahorn site earlier today. You and him kind of went back and forth on it about, if those are your concerns going into a season.
We have a pretty decent team.
Yeah, maybe your team isn't so bad after all. So let's wait until they play the Packers and then see how that thing go before we think the world is over and everything is terrible all the time. What's that term that Drew's coined? I can't remember, but I think
he calls it something.
Yeah,
everybody's something like that.
Yeah, everything sucks all the time or something like that. But I think that but really, let's wait till the real football starts. I still am very enthused about what team the Vikings will be in 2022, and I do that by just looking at the roster and looking at the players that we have
and the schedule what quarterbacks we're playing, etc. It's
and listening to particularly in the joint practices against the 49ers how well our offense looked in 2-minute drills and other things. Yeah, there we go. Everything sucks all the time. There we go. That's what that acronym is for. But so relax, people. If you're concerned, if the Vikings go 0-2 or 0-2, 0-3 to start the season, then it's time to get concerned. But I don't think that's going to happen, and I certainly don't think that's going to happen based on what I've seen in two preseason games when basically none of the starters have played at all, not even one snap.
Or you could go the route of Aaron Rodgers and start taking psychedelics. Speaking of relaxing, it works. we could save a spot with a lineman punter. He's not a lineman because he wears number 66. He's not a lineman. Unless you're talking about the kid, what was it, Zach Davidson?
Well, Davidson punted in college, yeah, but he's not playing offensive line.
Mm. But it's weird seeing White wear number 66. And he looks like a guard.
Yeah, he's a big boy, right?
He's a chunk barrel guy. So.
He's going to be a big boy unemployed in a week, too.
Mm-hmm. Probably, most likely. Well, that's it. That's today's show. I want to thank everybody for showing up. It was a great bunch of people in the remarks. Oh, my God, you guys were doing great. I tried to acknowledge some of you. Everybody, we love you and glad you are here to talk Minnesota Vikings on a Sunday where we have no football. We get back into it tomorrow. Tyler Fornes is already working on the show tomorrow. He'll be going over some of the things he sees. He's a little bit more of a pessimist than we are. But it should be interesting to see. He will go down. Now, the good thing about Tyler Fornes, who many of you know, he is now the managing editor of USA Today's Vikings Wire. He has made the transition to full-time sports reporter in a spectacular fashion, and he continues to work on that, and I wish him luck. You will get to see him tomorrow night as we go there. Tuesday, we have the cut down day where another 5 players, and there's a whole bunch you can pick from, but another 5 players will be released. We shall find out who, and you will get Tanishka Maskar of Climbing the Pocket and Zone Coverage. She will come on live to discuss those 5 players. As Drew said earlier, and speaking of the group, the Gallahorn group, who's up for guessing who those 5 will be? It's a good question. Wednesday, we have Vikings Happy Hour, possible special guest. And then we start all over. We have a game on Saturday. We have 2 bloggers. We have final score. We should see how it goes. Should be a fun week.
I guess we didn't talk about it. I think we're back to our normal Saturday
next
thing
Saturday
this week.
Before the game.
We only went Sunday this week, folks, because I was on planes and in airports all yesterday, so I couldn't do the show.
How much lobster did you eat while you were gone?
Roughly about, let's see, my mom got 8 2-pounders. I would say I ate about 6 of those 8 2-pounders. So 12 pounds of lobster.
Damn.
And wasn't nearly enough.
Oh, I agree with you. I love lobster. It's absolutely fabulous. Great food. All right. Well, thank everybody. And what do we say?
We say Skol Vikings, David.
Skol Vikings! Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite aggregator. And a special shout out goes to our partners, the Daily Norseman, where the best Vikings content can be found, and to Lake Monster Brewing, home of the best beer in Minnesota. Skol, everybody.